I'll never forget the silence that fell over that courtroom. When my husband looked me in the eyes, smiled with disdain, and said loud enough for the judge, for his lawyer, for my lawyer, for the interns in the back taking notes. She's never worked a day in her life, Your Honor. I supported this woman for 18 years. She lived off my dime, sleeping in late, watching TV while I worked my fingers to the bone to pay the bills for this house. And now, she wants half. Half of what? Of my sweat. My stomach churned. Not from fear, not from sadness, but from a rage so cold, so controlled that my knuckles turned white from gripping the strap of my purse. Beside me, Jessica Miller, my attorney, placed a hand on my arm. I knew what that touch meant. Stay calm, Elena. It's time. Because you see, I could have screamed. I could have leaped out of that hard, cold chair. I could have thrown in his face the 18 years I spent waking up at 5 a.m. to translate technical documents while he snored in the next room. I could have told everyone there how many times I stayed up until 3 a.m., finishing contracts in German, in English, in French, the glow of the computer screen burning my eyes while he came home smelling of another woman's perfume and complained that dinner was cold. But I said nothing. I just took a deep breath. I smelled the old paper and reheated coffee of that Denver courthouse. I heard the hum of the old air conditioner rattling in the corner. I looked at the judge, a man in his 60s gray hair reading glasses, who was jotting something down with a cheap blue Bic pen. Then the judge lifted his eyes from the paper, adjusted his glasses, and looked at Robert. My ex-husband was sitting there on the other side in his gray suit and navy blue tie with that air of someone in complete control. He always had that pose, a sales director for a multinational, a successful, respected man, the provider. The narrative he'd sold to everyone for nearly 2 decades. Mr. Foster, the judge said, his voice weary, like someone who'd heard so many lies in his life he was no longer impressed. Are you stating under oath that your wife never worked during the marriage? Rob didn't even hesitate. He straightened in his chair, ran a hand through his gelled hair, and answered with that infuriating conviction. That's correct, Your Honor. She stayed home. I paid for everything. Power, water, the kids' school, groceries, health insurance, everything. I have the receipts right here if you'd like to see them. Everything in my name, everything from my account. I saw his lawyer, a blonde woman in high heels with an expensive leather briefcase, nod in agreement, as if to say, that's right, you can trust him. I saw my son Peter, who was sitting on the bench behind me. He'd insisted on coming, even though I told him to stay home, clench his fists. He knew. My children knew. But no one besides me, Jessica, and Sarah, my best friend, knew just how much I had saved. The judge drummed his fingers on the desk, then looked at Jessica. Counselor, does the defense have anything to say regarding this statement? Jessica rose slowly. She was impeccable. A black pantsuit, her hair tied back with the air of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. She placed her briefcase on the table, opened it calmly, and took out a flash drive. A small, insignificant red flash drive that held 18 years of my life. Your Honor, she said in her firm voice, my client would like to present documentary evidence that completely contradicts the respondent's claim. Rob let out a small laugh. I heard it. It was low, mocking, as if he were thinking, what evidence? She has nothing. The judge took the flash drive, plugged it into his computer. The room fell silent except for the clicking of the mouse as files were opened. And then the judge began to scroll slowly down the screen. His eyes moved down, down, down. I saw the exact moment he understood. He stopped scrolling, went back to the top, opened one folder, then another, then another. He opened a PDF, zoomed in, read. And then for the first time since we'd entered that room, I saw that 60-year-old man who had probably seen it all in his career frown. He took off his glasses, cleaned them on the tip of his tie, put them back on, looked at the screen again, and then turned to Robert. Mr. Foster, the judge said, and I swear you could cut the tension in that room with a knife. I'm looking at monthly deposits into a joint account in your name and Mrs. Elena Foster's, averaging $4,500 made by Mrs. Elena Foster from May 2007 to March 2025. That comes to, let me do the math here. That's 18 years, 216 months. Somewhere in the neighborhood of $972,000. Sir, are you certain your wife never worked? The silence. My God, the silence. I heard Rob swallow hard. I saw the color drain from his face. His lawyer looked at him with an expression that said, you told me what exactly? And the judge continued. Because here, Mr. Foster, I am also seeing. Ah, how interesting. A wire transfer receipt from Mrs. Elena Foster in the amount of $100,000 for the down payment on a residential property acquired in 2009 on Maple Avenue in the Washington Park neighborhood, Denver. That property is the residence where you currently live, correct? Rob opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He looked like a fish out of water. Your Honor, that was… And here the judge went on. Now, flipping through other pages, I see a receipt for $50,000 for a complete renovation of the property, in 2012 paid in full by Mrs. Foster. Mr. Foster, just so I understand, the house you live in, for which the down payment was paid by your wife, the renovation was paid by your wife, and to which your wife contributed monthly, an amount exceeding 80% of the household income for 18 years. You're telling me she didn't work? I felt a shiver run up my spine. It wasn't fear. It was something I hadn't felt in a long time. It was power. It was the feeling that finally someone was seeing, someone was listening, someone was believing. Rob tried to compose himself. He's good at that. He was always good at composing himself, at turning the tables, at making you doubt your own reality. Your Honor, with all due respect, my wife, my ex-wife, she did some freelance gigs, yes, translations, but that's not a real job. She was at home on the computer. She had no schedule, no boss, no real responsibility. I was the one. Gigs, Jessica interrupted, and I loved the tone of her voice, sharp cutting. Your Honor, I request permission to present supplementary documents. The judge nodded. Jessica placed a folder on the table, a thick, heavy folder full of paper. She opened it and began pulling out document after document. Contract signed between Mrs. Elena Foster and Siemens USA for the technical translation of engineering manuals totaling $120,000 over 5 years. Contracts with Volkswagen of America for simultaneous translation at executive meetings, valued at $90,000 over 3 years. Contracts with the University of Colorado Boulder for the academic translation of scientific papers, valued at $52,000 over 6 years. Contracts with… Counselor, the judge said, raising a hand. I understand. You can submit these to the record. He looked at Rob again, and this time I saw something different in that judge's eyes. I saw indignation. Mr. Foster, you came into this hearing under oath and you lied. You not only lied, but you attempted to discredit the dignified work of a highly skilled professional who financially supported this family for nearly 2 decades, while you… Let me see here. Yes. While you, according to these statements, which are also here, spent an average of $2,000 a month on restaurants, bars, and hotels, which, from what I can see, do not coincide with any business travel declared by your company. The bomb had dropped. I didn't even know about that part. Jessica hadn't told me. She had investigated, she had dug deep, and she had found it. Rob's lawyer shot to her feet, trying to protest, but the judge raised his hand again. I'm calling a 1-5-minute recess for the respondent and his counsel to reevaluate their strategy. Because let me be very clear, if we continue down this path, it won't just be the division of assets that weighs against Mr. Foster. There will be litigation in bad faith, there will be damages for emotional distress, and I might even consider contempt of court depending on how you conduct yourself from this point forward. Is that understood? Rob was pale, ashen, sweating. He looked at me. I held his gaze. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just looked firm, serene. Because I had waited 18 years for this moment. And now, finally, the truth was on the table. Those 15 minutes of recess felt like a scene from a movie in slow motion. I walked out of that courtroom, down the courthouse corridor, past people waiting in lines, past lawyers talking in hushed tones, past bored security guards, and every step seemed to echo in my head. Jessica followed me, led me to a small empty room, closed the door, and hugged me. You did it, Elena, she whispered in my ear. You did it. And only in that moment, away from Rob's eyes, away from the judge, away from everyone, did I let the tears fall. They weren't tears of sadness. They were of relief, of liberation, of justice, finally. But for you to understand how I got there in that courtroom with a red flash drive full of evidence in my hand, I need to go back in time. I need to tell you how it all began. I met Robert in 2005. I was 23, having just graduated from CU Boulder with a degree in linguistics and a specialization in translation. I was fluent in English, French, and German. My mother, who had died 2 years earlier from a swift and brutal cancer, always used to say, Elena, study languages. Languages open doors. Languages give you independence. And she was right. When my mom died, she left me a small inheritance, $120,000. It might not seem like much to some, but to me back then, it was everything. It was security, a future. I guarded that money like it was gold, investing it in CDs and mutual funds, growing it slowly. I met Rob at a corporate event. He was 26, just promoted to sales supervisor at a multinational auto parts company. He was handsome, a smooth talker, with that ambitious man charm, a man who knew what he wanted. He won me over, I won't lie. He took me to nice restaurants, introduced me to his friends, made me feel special. We dated for a year. He proposed at an Italian restaurant in Cherry Creek, complete with a violinist. I said yes, of course I did. I was in love. I believed in him. I believed in us. We got married in 2006. A small wedding, just family and close friends at a venue here in Denver. Honeymoon in Key West. We came back and rented a small apartment in the Capitol Hill area. I was already working as a freelance translator, landing my first contracts with small companies, subtitling corporate videos, translating emails, simple documents. In the beginning, Rob was proud of me. He'd tell his friends, my wife's a translator, speaks 4 languages. He found it interesting, modern, useful when he needed a quick translation for work. But things started to change when I got pregnant with Laura in 2007. I remember the day I told him. We were having dinner at our small apartment table, pasta with Alfredo sauce I'd made. He came home tired from work, complaining about his boss, the traffic, the pressure. I waited for him to eat a little, to breathe, to relax, and then I said, Rob, I'm pregnant. He stopped his fork in midair, looked at me and smiled. It was a genuine smile. I swear it was. He got up, hugged me, spun me around the living room. I'm going to be a dad. I'm going to be a dad. In that moment, I thought everything would be okay. Laura was born in February 2008. A natural birth, 12 hours of labor. But when I held that little girl in my arms, when I looked at her tiny closed eyes, her perfect face, I knew I had found my purpose. But Rob changed that day too. He started coming home later and later from work. He started complaining about the noise Laura made at night. He started sleeping on the couch because he needed to rest for work the next day. And when I asked for help, when I asked him to watch the baby for just an hour so I could take a decent shower, he'd say, Elena, I work all day. You're at home. This is your job. Your job. As if caring for a newborn wasn't work. As if waking up every 3 hours to nurse wasn't exhausting. As if changing diapers, giving baths, soothing cries, organizing doctor's appointments, vaccinations, as if none of that had value. But I didn't argue. I swallowed it. I did it. And on top of that, I kept working. Because the translation contracts didn't stop. In fact, they grew. Siemens hired me to translate technical manuals for industrial equipment. It was complex work that demanded precision-specific knowledge. I'd study the technical terminology late at night, with Laura nursing at my breast, my laptop open on the nightstand, my eyes burning with exhaustion. I remember whole nights spent translating turbine specifications, while rocking her cradle with my foot. I remember video conferences with European clients at 6 a.m., still in my pajamas, with Laura asleep in my lap, my camera off, pretending I was in a professional office, when really, I was in our messy bedroom with baby clothes hanging off a chair. But I always delivered on time, always with quality. And the money came in. $4,000 one month, $5,000 the next, $6,000 depending on the workload. And where did all that money go? Into the joint account. The one Rob swore was only funded by him. In 2009, Rob was promoted to manager. His salary jumped to $120,000 a year, and that's when he started talking about buying a house. Elena, we need a bigger space. Laura is growing. We need a yard security, a good neighborhood. I agreed, of course. I wanted that too. We started looking. We saw several houses, and then we found it on Maple Avenue in Washington Park. It was perfect. 3 bedrooms, a yard, a 2-car garage. The price was $450,000. Rob went to the bank for a mortgage. He came back frustrated. They're asking for a $100,000 down payment, Elena. I don't have that. We'll have to wait. That's when I said I have it. He looked at me surprised. You have what? I have the money for the down payment. My mom's inheritance. I invested it, it grew. I have about $140,000 saved. I'll never forget his expression. It was a mix of surprise and something else, something I couldn't identify at the time. Today I know what it was. It was greed. Then let's buy it, he said. We'll use your money for the down payment, and I'll make the mortgage payments. And that's what we did. I wired $100,000 from my account to the title company. We signed the papers. The house was in both our names, community property, but I was the one who paid for the entry. We moved in March 2009. Laura was 1 year old, and I was pregnant again, with Peter. Peter was born in September 2009. Another natural birth, another marathon, but this time Rob didn't even stay at the hospital all day. He showed up in the morning, stayed for a couple of hours, and said he had to get back to work for an important meeting. I was alone with 2 kids in a big house working because the contracts never stopped. Volkswagen hired me for simultaneous translation in executive meetings. It was well paid but extremely demanding. I had to be available sometimes at the last minute. And how did I manage that with 2 babies at home? I paid for a babysitter out of my own pocket, because Rob said that if I chose to work, I had to bear the costs of my work. I paid and I kept depositing into the joint account, religiously, every month. Meanwhile, Rob started traveling more for work, or at least that's what he said. Going to Chicago to close a deal, going to New York to meet a client, going to Miami for a presentation. Always 2, 3-day trips, always with expenses paid by the company. Or so he said. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I was too busy to be suspicious, too tired to investigate, too exhausted to question, until 2012 when the house started having problems. A leak in the roof, cracks in the foundation, old wiring. We needed an urgent renovation. The estimate came in at $55,000. I don't have that kind of money right now, Elena, Rob said. My salary is tied up in the mortgage, the kids' school. A school I also paid half of, by the way. So, we don't renovate, I asked. Don't you have anything saved? He shot back. I did, of course I did. Because I was always prepared. I always saved. From the contracts I worked on, I'd set aside 20% and put it in a separate savings account. It was my emergency fund. I admitted. Then use your money. When I'm back on my feet, I'll pay you back. He never did. I paid $50,000 for the renovation. I replaced all the wiring, redid the roof, fixed the bathrooms, painted the whole house. The house became beautiful, its value increased, and my emergency fund was gone. But I kept working. I kept depositing. I kept being invisible. Because that's what I was, invisible. I worked 2 hours a day. I'd wake at 5 a.m. to translate before the kids woke up. I'd stop to make breakfast, take Laura to school, come back, work until noon, make lunch, pick Laura up, help with homework, put Peter down for a nap, go back to the computer, work until 10 p.m., make dinner, clean the house. And when I finally collapsed into bed exhausted, Rob would be there on his phone laughing at something, scrolling through WhatsApp. Who are you talking to? I'd sometimes ask. Just people from work, he'd reply, without even looking up. I didn't push. Not because I trusted him, but because I was too tired to fight. The years passed like that. 2013, 2014, 2015. Me working, depositing, raising the kids, maintaining the house, being a wife, a mother, a professional, being everything. And Rob went to happy hours, to barbecues with friends, to business dinners that lasted until the early morning, to conferences that always happened to be in fun cities, to trainings that coincided with long weekends. But the worst part wasn't that. The worst part was how he treated me. Elena, this house is a mess. What do you do all day? He'd say. Elena, the kids are so misbehaved. You don't set any boundaries for them, he'd complain. Elena, you've gained weight. You don't take care of yourself anymore. You don't even try, he'd criticize. And I believed him. I'd look in the mirror and see a tired woman with deep dark circles under her eyes, her hair in a messy bun because she didn't have time for the salon, wearing old clothes because she prioritized buying clothes for the kids. And I thought he was right. Until 2023, when Sarah woke me up. Sarah is my best friend from college, an accountant, practical, objective. She came to visit on a Saturday afternoon. The kids were at their paternal grandmother's house. Rob had traveled again to close a deal in San Francisco. We were having coffee in the kitchen when she asked me, Elena, tell me something. Do you keep track of the household finances? Of course, I replied. I deposit every month into the joint account. Rob pays the bills. Do you ever look at the statements? I hesitated. No. Why? Because you should, she said. And then she opened her purse and pulled out a folder. Elena, I pulled the statements for your joint account. You gave me access, remember? When you asked me to organize some receipts for your taxes, I remembered. I took a look out of professional curiosity, and I found some strange things. My heart started pounding. What kind of things? She opened the folder, started showing me charges from motels, hotels, expensive restaurants, jewelers, online purchases, from gift websites. Elena, in the last 5 years, Rob has spent over $120,000 on things that have nothing to do with the house, the kids, or you two. This is another life. A life you're not seeing. I felt the floor drop out from under me. And on that day, in that kitchen with Sarah holding my hand, I understood. I wasn't invisible. I was being deliberately erased. I wasn't incapable. I was being deliberately diminished. I wasn't being supported. I was the one doing the supporting, while being robbed. And on that day, I decided. Enough, I said, wiping away tears. Help me, Sarah. Help me gather everything. Every receipt, every deposit, every contract. Everything. I want it all documented. And Sarah smiled. The kind of smile from someone who knows the war has just begun. I've already started, my friend. I've already started. For the next 6 months, I became someone else. Not on the outside. On the outside, I was the same old Elena. I woke up early, made coffee, took the kids to school, worked, cleaned the house, made dinner, but on the inside, I was a woman on a mission. Sarah taught me the first rule: document everything without a trace. We'd meet once a week at a coffee shop downtown, far from my neighborhood, far from anywhere Rob might show up. She'd bring her laptop. I'd bring flash drives, folders, notes, and we started putting the puzzle together. She got access to the complete statements for the joint account for the last 10 years. Every deposit of mine, every withdrawal of his, every payment, every transfer, we categorized it all in a massive spreadsheet. I'll never forget the day she showed me the final result. Elena, she said, turning her laptop toward me. In 18 years of marriage, you deposited $972,000 into this account. Rob deposited $540,000. You contributed almost double what he did. And you know what's funny? In the last 5 years, he withdrew $190, 0 inches cash. $190,000. No justification, no receipts. I felt bile rise in my throat. Where did that money go? I have a theory, Sarah said, opening another tab. Look here. Hotel charges always on the same weekends. Charges on his personal credit card, the one not linked to the joint account, at expensive restaurants always for 2 people. Purchases at jewelry stores, lingerie shops, imported perfumes. Elena, he has another life, and he's financing it with the money you deposit. I wanted to scream, to cry, to slam my fists on the table. But I did none of that. I just took a deep breath and asked, what do I do now? You get a lawyer, a good one, and you file for divorce before he does it first. Because a man who cheats, who lies, who hides money will eventually want to get rid of his wife to be with his mistress. And when that happens, he'll try to leave you with nothing. You need to get ahead of him. That's how I met Jessica Miller. Sarah gave me her contact. She specializes in contentious divorce and asset division. She's expensive, but worth every penny. Trust me. I called the next day, made an appointment. I went alone on a day Rob was traveling and the kids were at school. Jessica's office was in a high-rise in the financial district 12th floor, a spacious room with a massive glass desk and a wall of law books. She was in her late 30s, sleek black hair to her shoulders, sharp brown eyes, and the posture of someone who's seen everything and is impressed by nothing. Sit down, Elena, she said, pointing to the leather chair across from her desk. Tell me everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. Don't hide anything. Don't spare the details. I need to know exactly what we're dealing with. And I told her. I told her about the 18 years of marriage, the monthly deposits, the down payment, the renovation, the invisible work, his trips, the suspicions, the statements Sarah had found. I told her everything. When I finished, Jessica put her pen down, steepled her fingers, and looked me right in the eye. Elena, you have an incredibly strong case, not just for the division of assets, but for emotional distress damages. What he did is called misappropriation of marital funds and defamation. You worked, you contributed, you supported the family, and he erased you, made you invisible, and on top of that, diverted your shared assets. This is serious. What do I need to do? I asked, and my voice was firm. Firmer than I thought it could be. First, we need everything documented. Statements, receipts, contracts, tax returns, everything. Second, we need witnesses. Someone who can confirm you always worked, always contributed. Third, we need to investigate him. Because if he's spending that much money with no justification, he's hiding something, And we're going to find out what. Will you help me, I asked, and I think there was a note of pleading in my voice. Jessica smiled. It was a small smile but full of meaning. Elena, I'm not going to help you. I'm going to represent you. And when I'm done, Robert is going to understand that he messed with the wrong woman. The next 3 months were war. A silent war, but war nonetheless. Jessica hired a private investigator, a discreet, efficient man in his 50s. He followed Rob for a whole month, photographed him, filmed him, documented everything. And he found her. Rob had a mistress. A 32-year-old marketing analyst blonde living in a rented apartment in the low-high neighborhood. And guess who was paying the rent on that apartment? Guess who was paying for her gym membership? Guess who bought a brand new compact car in her name? That's right, Rob, with money from the joint account. With my money. When Jessica showed me the photos, I felt a strange sensation. It wasn't pain, it wasn't anger. It was almost a relief. Because now I was sure. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't paranoid, I was right all along. He's been with her for 3 years, Jessica said, showing me the timeline the investigator had assembled. Met her at a trade show in Denver. Started as an affair, turned into a parallel relationship. He spends the weekends you think he's away on business with her. He takes her to restaurants, hotels, on trips, and he's paying for all of it with money that should have been for your family. I want a divorce, I said, and my voice didn't tremble one bit. I want a divorce and I want everything that is mine by right. You'll get it, Jessica promised. But we're going to do this the right way. We're not confronting him now. We're going to gather all the evidence, organize it, and when we have an airtight case, then we file. He won't know what hit him. And that's exactly what we did. While I continued living that life of appearances, coming home, making dinner, sleeping next to him, pretending everything was fine, Jessica was building a complete dossier. Bank statements, payment receipts, work contracts, tax returns, photos, videos, WhatsApp messages. The investigator managed to recover. And then one day in October 2024, I decided, enough. I can't pretend anymore. It was a Sunday. Rob was watching football in the living room. The kids were in their rooms. I walked in, turned off the TV, and said, "We need to talk." He looked at me annoyed. "Elena, I'm watching the game. I want a divorce." Silence. He blinked, processed it, and then he laughed. A cruel, mocking laugh. "You want a divorce, you, Elena. For God's sake, what are you going to do with your life without me? You don't work, you have no money, you have nothing. You're a housewife. You depend on me." And in that moment, I felt something shift inside me. It was like a door had closed and another had opened. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel hurt. I felt pity. Pity for a man so arrogant he couldn't even see his own downfall. "Okay, Rob," I said calmly. "You'll be served the papers. We'll see each other in court." I walked out of the room. I went to my bedroom, picked up my phone and texted Jessica, "File it now." The bomb went off a week later. Rob was served the legal notice at home. I was working in the makeshift office I'd set up in the guest room when I heard him scream, Elena, get down here now." I walked downstairs slowly. He was in the living room with the papers in his hand, his face red with rage. "What is this?" he yelled. "A contentious divorce filing with a request for division of assets, emotional distress, damages, and misappropriation of funds. Have you lost your mind?" "No," I replied calmly. "I've woken up. You won't get anything, Elena. Nothing. This house is mine. I paid for it. I supported you for 18 years. You don't work. You have no right to anything." "We'll see," I said, and went back upstairs. He kept yelling for about 10 minutes, then slammed the door and left. He didn't come back until the middle of the night, drunk and slept on the couch. From then on, it was open war. He hired a lawyer, a woman I later learned was known for being aggressive, for using intimidation tactics. She tried to call me. I didn't answer. She tried to schedule mediation sessions. I refused. Everything went through Jessica. Rob started emptying the joint account, transferring everything he could to an account in his name. But Jessica had anticipated that. She got an injunction freezing any transaction over $1,000 without court approval. He was furious. He started threatening me. "You're going to regret this, Elena. I'm going to leave you destitute. I'm going to prove you're a worthless leech who never worked a day in her life. I'm going to destroy you." But I wasn't afraid anymore. Because I had something he didn't. The truth. And evidence. Lots of evidence. The mediation hearing was scheduled for January 2025. We went me, Jessica, Rob, and his lawyer. It was in a small room at the courthouse. The mediator tried to get us to reach an agreement. Rob offered 20% of the value of the house. 20%. I refused. He raised it to 30%. I refused again. Your Honor, Jessica said to the mediator, my client will not accept less than 60% of the total marital assets plus $150, 0 inches emotional distress damages, plus alimony of $3,000 a month for 5 years. Rob's lawyer nearly choked. That's absurd. My client supported this woman for 18 years. Supported her, Jessica said with that sharp smile. Your Honor, we request that this move to a formal hearing before a judge. We will prove document by document who supported whom. And that's when the judge scheduled the hearing. That hearing, the one that happened 3 weeks later, the one you already saw, the one that changed everything. But there's one more thing I haven't told you, something that happened the week before the hearing. Rob tried to buy me back. He showed up at the house on a Friday night, rang the doorbell. I opened it. He was holding flowers, red roses. My heart didn't even speed up. I just looked at him and thought, too late. Elena, he said, his voice almost soft. We need to stop this. We have 18 years together. We have children. We have a history. Let's start over. I admit I made mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes. But I still love you. We can fix this. I took the flowers, looked at them, and then I spoke with the calmest, firmest voice I'd ever had. Rob, you never loved me. You used me. You erased me. You diminished me. You spent the money I earned with my own sweat to pay for your mistress while I raised your children and kept your home. And now that you're cornered, now that you know you're going to lose everything, you come with flowers and pretty words. No. I don't accept it. I don't want it anymore. I wish you good luck in court. You're going to need it. And I closed the door in his face. That night, I slept better than I had in years. When we returned to the courtroom after those 15 minutes of recess, the atmosphere had completely changed. Rob walked in with his head down, his tie loosened, sweating. His lawyer had the tense expression of someone who knows they've lost control of the situation. I walked in calmly, head held high with Jessica by my side. The judge was already seated. He looked at us over his glasses and said, "Let's proceed. Mr. Foster, have you and your counsel had time to reevaluate your position?" His lawyer stood up, smoothed her blazer, and tried to regain control. Your Honor, my client acknowledges there may have been a misunderstanding regarding the plaintiff's financial contributions. However, we still maintain that the division of assets should follow the legal standard for community property 50/50, and that, Counselor, the judge, interrupted his tone devoid of patience. I'm going to be blunt. I spent the last 15 minutes reviewing the documents presented by the plaintiff's defense, and I have some questions for your client. Questions that, depending on the answers, could constitute not only bad faith litigation, but more serious crimes. Are you aware of that, Mr. Foster? Rob swallowed hard, nodded. Good. First question. At any point in the last 18 years, did you declare Mrs. Foster as your dependent on your income tax returns? Silence. Mr. Foster, I asked a question. Yes, Your Honor, Rob mumbled. I did. You declared her as a dependent, as someone with no income of her own. Correct. But Mrs. Foster did have her own income. She had a registered business, she issued invoices, she paid taxes. It's all documented here. So you knowingly filed a false declaration with the IRS. Are you aware that this could constitute tax fraud? Rob's face went white. His lawyer tried to intervene, but the judge held up a hand. I'm not finished. Second question. According to these bank statements, you made cash withdrawals over the last 5 years, totaling $190,000. Can you explain what this money was for? Rob opened his mouth, closed it, looked at his lawyer. She put a hand on his arm, but he was clearly panicking. They were personal expenses, Your Honor. Personal expenses, the judge repeated. $190, 0 inches cash, with no receipts, no paper trail. Mr. Foster, are you aware that this constitutes suspicious financial activity and that I can at this moment request the IRS to launch a full investigation into your financial affairs? Your Honor, his lawyer tried, this is outside the scope of this divorce hearing. No, it is not, Counselor, the judge snapped. Because the division of assets depends on the correct identification of the marital estate, and if there is evidence that the respondent diverted marital funds, it directly affects that division. So, Mr. Foster, I'll ask again. Where did the money go? It was at that moment that Jessica stood up. Your Honor, if I may, I believe I can help clarify. The judge gestured for her to proceed. Jessica opened her briefcase and took out an envelope. Inside were photos. She laid them on the table one by one so everyone could see. They were photos of Rob with his mistress at a restaurant, at a hotel, entering her apartment building, kissing her in a mall parking garage. And the last one was a copy of a rental agreement for $2,500 a month in the name of a one Camila Rodriguez paid from Robert Foster's bank account. Your Honor, Jessica said with murderous calm, my client's husband diverted funds from the joint account to maintain an extramarital affair for at least 3 years. He paid his mistress's rent, her gym membership, her dinners, hotels, vacations, all with money that should have been for his family. And most grievously, he did this while accusing my client of being a freeloader who contributed nothing. The silence that fell in that room was so thick I could hear my own heart beating. I looked at Rob. He was destroyed. Not physically, but emotionally, psychologically, he was shattered. All the arrogance was gone, the facade had melted away. He was just a pathetic, exposed, humiliated man. And you know what I felt? Nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not pity. Just a void, as if I had closed a door to a room in my life, and now that room no longer existed. The judge took off his glasses, rubbed his eyes, put them back on, and then he looked at Rob with an expression that mixed disgust and exhaustion. Mr. Foster, in 35 years on the bench, I've seen a lot. But what you have done here today, you came into a court of law under oath and lied shamelessly. You defamed your wife. You attempted to steal a fortune that she helped build. You diverted marital funds to maintain a mistress. This is not just bad faith. This is cruelty. He turned to Rob's lawyer. Counselor, I am going to give your client one more chance. One single chance. Either he accepts a fair settlement proposal that recognizes Mrs. Foster's contribution, or I will rule on this case based on what I have seen here today. And I assure you the judgment will not be favorable to your client. Quite the opposite. In addition to a disproportionate division of assets, I will award significant damages for emotional distress, and I will be forwarding copies of this proceeding to the IRS and the District Attorney's Office. Is that clear? The lawyer swallowed hard, looked at Rob, whispered something in his ear. He nodded, defeated. Your Honor, she said, may we have a few minutes to speak with the opposing party? 5 minutes, the judge said. Use them well. I left the room with Jessica. We went down that same corridor into that same small, empty room. She closed the door and looked at me with a smile. You did it, Elena. He's broken. Now we just close the deal on our terms. 2 minutes later, Rob's lawyer knocked. She came in looking exhausted. My client is prepared to make an offer, she said. He accepts 60% of the assets going to Mrs. Foster. He accepts paying $75, 0 inches damages, and alimony of $2,000 a month for 3 years. Jessica looked at me. I knew she was asking me without words. Is it enough, I thought? I thought about the 18 years, the late nights working, the stolen money, the humiliation, the lies. And then I said no. The lawyer blinked. What do you mean no? 60% of the assets. $150. 0 inches damages $3,000 a month in alimony for 5 years. And he signs a statement to be entered into the public record, acknowledging that I always worked, that I contributed financially to the family, and that his allegations in this hearing were false and slanderous. That is non-negotiable. The lawyer hesitated. I'll have to consult my client. Consult, Jessica said. But you have 3 minutes. After that, we go back in and let the judge decide. And I guarantee it will be much worse for him. The lawyer left and came back 2 minutes later. He accepts. And that was it. In that moment, in that cold, windowless room in the Denver courthouse, I won. Not just the case. I won my dignity back. We returned to the courtroom. The judge heard the terms of the settlement, had it all recorded, and then he looked at me and said, Mrs. Foster, I want you to know that cases like yours are far more common than they should be. Women who work, who contribute, who support, and who are erased, made invisible. I hope this judgment serves as a reminder that justice may be slow, but it arrives. I wish you the best in your new life. I smiled and thanked him, and I walked out of that courtroom with my head held high. But the story didn't end there. As I was leaving the courthouse, walking down those old marble steps, Rob came after me. He caught up to me in the parking lot. Elena, wait. I stopped. I turned and looked at him. He looked wrecked. His eyes were red, his hands were shaking, his voice was choked. I'm sorry. For everything. I was an idiot, a coward. I treated you horribly. I underestimated you. I still love you, Elena. Couldn't we try again? Start over. I'll end it with Camila. I'll change. I promise. I'll change. And you know what I felt hearing that pity? A deep, profound pity. Because he truly believed he could fix 18 years of emotional and financial abuse with a desperate apology in a parking lot. I took a deep breath and then I said, with all the calm in the world, Rob, you don't love me. You never did. You loved the idea of having a woman who served you, who supported you, who was invisible enough for you to do whatever you wanted without consequences. But that woman doesn't exist anymore. I'm not her. And I don't want to be. So no, we're not going to try again. We're not starting over. We are well and truly finished, and I hope you find peace far, far away from me. I turned my back and walked away. And when I got in my car, when I closed the door and gripped the steering wheel, I finally let the tears fall. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of liberation. I was free.